Hello and welcome to this edition of Going Public. I'm your host, Keith Whiteside, licensed clinical social worker. Thank you for joining us. However you may be joining us, we appreciate it very, very much. And speaking of appreciation, very glad to have with us Mr. Wendell Cural, the General Manager of the South Lafourche Levy District. Thank you so much for being here.
Pleasure to be here. It's always good to share all these war stories that we've been having to go through the last few years.
Yeah, and it's almost like every time you turn around, you hear or see somebody else. I mean, you just finally went from the bathroom-sized camper that you were in to get back into your house.
Yeah, just within the month.
Within the last month.
And you're still.
And I'm still in a camper in the driveway. Yeah. And look, we're close. We're expecting next 2 to 3 weeks. And yet you and I are still so much farther than so many others.
Well, that's the other thing I was about to say. There's so many people that are so far behind the things that this storm has done. But you know what? After going through the little things, and it's little things compared to some other people, but it's a storm that did that, an act of nature, not intentional. It's just nature being nature. But to see what's going in Ukraine, to see the suffering inflicted on purpose, and that that really put, how frustrating could that be compared to what we had to go through? Which is, again, it's just an act of nature, just
and we were able to be as prepared as we could be for it, knowing with all of the difficulty. But a war-torn area, a senseless war, if you will,
intentional
so frustrating.
That's a frustrating thing.
Yeah. Well, I am so very thankful that you've kind of put together this slideshow for us as we walk through, and we're going to see some things that are shocking.
Well, at least one of the things, it wasn't fun at the time. But that storm, 150 mile an hour winds, that's the most wind velocity hit southeast Louisiana.
Yes.
Okay. The intensity of this storm is the 5th most intense storm to ever hit the United States. And the critical path was on Fouchon, Grand Isle, and South Lafourche. Now, that's not to say the backside wasn't, as you know, powerful, the way it whipped here into Terrebonne. I mean, unbelievable power and destruction on this side. It was just a powerful storm and stayed powerful all the way as it got into the parishes above us.
And it did something differently that we've ever seen before. And this is, again, one of the things that we talked about with the National Hurricane Center. It actually was as strong as any storm when it hit land. So that they measured some 175, 180, and at one point 190 mile an hour winds on land. They don't measure the winds once it gets to land, which is the only reason why it wasn't listed as a Category 5 storm. But those are the types of winds that were sustained down in South Lafourche.
It was, again, I've never seen the place torn up so much. I remember going to visit Waveland, Mississippi after Katrina, and going over into the Biloxi, seeing how bad the trees looked. I mean, the tree, that was terrible destruction, but the trees were torn up, totally torn up. And when first light hit during the storm, it reminded me of what I had seen on that, to see how bad all the trees looked. But then, here we are 8 months after the storm, and I'm still realizing there's some buildings that are no longer there. It's 8 months. I've been driving up and down the Bayou, and I'm still noticing some of the destruction that took place. And that's all over, here in Grand Isle, unbelievable. Fouchon handled it relatively well considering the situation. Torn up in Terrebonne and Lafourche, and you head up north of us, people had some tremendous damage. So this was, again, tied for the 5th most intense hurricane to ever hit the United States.
And at the same time, one of the things that I have prided our area with and for is what you guys have done and what our Terrebonne Levy District has done in keeping the water out of, and could have been catastrophic flooding.
Well, it would have been.
Our levee systems made a difference.
Well, again, number one, I mentioned this to you. When Katrina was approaching, we probably had a good 90% to 95% evacuation. And this storm was headed in a more critical spot for us, and the winds more powerful than Katrina, okay? And people didn't leave. I've had some estimates from people that were out, like the fire district told me, they think 30 to 40% of the people stayed. Now, with a storm Category 4, could it go into Category 5, and no matter what, even a Category 3, with high water, the top of the levee cliffs, we could have had 6 and 7 feet of water in most of the homes in South Lafourche. That was a real possibility.
That's right.
And when people ask me personally, I would tell them flat out, look, if we're lucky, maybe we'll keep the water out. But a little bad luck, you're going to get 7 feet, 8 feet of water in your house. Get out, go to naturally high ground. Hopefully the levee does keep the water out,
Right.
and you'll come back to your house, and that's all good. But don't put your life and don't risk it on having a little bit of good luck.
Yeah.
Well, too many people stayed, and I hope
Right.
this never happens again
Yeah.
on a powerful storm.
I've heard a lot of people say that they won't leave, but you were with a group of people that did stay, and y'all went to one of the most secure buildings you could go
Well,
to.
we always, we need to stay. We run,
Right.
we run
That's
the
what you
pumps,
do.
the floodgates, and you can't do anything in the middle of the wind blowing 130 miles an hour, 140. But you want to be out there as soon as you can to start managing the pumps, managing the floodgates and the locks. And so, again, it's volunteer. I asked my crew to stay, and they stay in the biggest building we have in South Lafourche is the hospital.
Okay.
And we normally would get on the third floor because the hospital would be empty. But because of all the issues going on, the hospital couldn't get rid of all of the patients. And so they were there, so we were on the second floor. And, so I try to convince all of my employees to get their family to evacuate to naturally high ground,
Right.
so that they can worry about themselves and their lives and not have to worry about their family.
Right.
But we had the issue, and if you want to look at it,
Let's do that. Let's go through the PowerPoint because it's just a picture speaks 1,000 words, and certainly this one does. So Jen, start us off if you don't mind. And so again, this is the information that we got from Wendell Cural, General Manager, and let's go to that second slide, please.
and this is the hospital. If you look real close, that's the hospital in the background, and that's the roof coming off right now. And I was actually walking down the hall looking toward the west where the wind was blowing in that direction.
Right.
And it's a large picture window at the end of the hall in the hospital. And all of a sudden, I'm seeing, it looks like a scene from The Wizard of Oz when the house is in the tornado, because I'm seeing this roofing material going down and up in all kind of different directions. I can't understand what's going on. And then I hear the hospital people, the nurses and all, saying, go to the middle of the building. And I'm saying, what's going on? And it took a few minutes, and finally they mentioned the roof got blown off,
And you're standing some 80 feet to the left side of this watching.
Well,
this.
inside the building,
Inside
watching
the building.
this stuff, and I'm looking at the picture window, and this roofing material's going down and up and crossways, and then of course, those of us with the Levy district, we don't have our family there. Our family's somewhere else, but they're looking at their phones are working.
Right.
We can't call anybody,
That's
but the
right.
phones are working.
Phones are working, right.
And a number of our wives and relatives were wondering, were we okay?
Yeah.
I did not know if anybody would, but luckily nobody was hurt. It all worked out. And again, true miracles took place. Number one, we didn't flood.
Didn't
the
flood,
levee
right.
was just,
It held
30 to 40% of the levee, the water was in a foot of getting to the
within
top.
1 foot of the top of the levees.
And it did overtop in 3 places,
Right.
but not enough to cause any real damage. One place it did pond a little bit was in a sugarcane field at Cloverly. The lowest part of that area might have gotten 3 feet deep, but even that worked out okay. The sugarcane survived very well and did very well,
Right.
but nobody died. We had so many people there, but had the water gotten in, the fire department, they got on the road and they let us know, so we figured if they get on the road, we can get on the road. But also they commandeered an excavator and cleared the road so you can get around and do things. But they also commandeered a school bus, and they picked up about 51 people who were trapped in these houses that were blown down. And they were in the middle of the storm. Had the water gotten in, and that we just barely got by without flooding.
Yeah.
We would have had hundreds of people that would have drowned, and that's the lesson. Do it when there's a powerful storm. Go to naturally high ground. Don't depend on the levee system for your survival. Go to naturally high ground, and hopefully that happens again. We did so well for Katrina. That was a real threat. That storm could have wiped us out. People left. This storm was no less of a threat. They needed to get out of the way, but we didn't. So next storm, and from now on, when the parish says leave, go to natural high ground.
All non-essential personnel needs to leave, and
how
all
difficult-
essential need to be in places where they can be safe.
Well, exactly, and it's less people, less chance of having a problem. But we we all get aggravated about getting back. But the reason you can't get back right away because it's dangerous. All right, just last year, Zeta. I'm driving around right after it was a short, heavy wind, but
right.
I'm driving around after. It's twilight, and I'm going about 45 miles an hour. Next thing I know, I'm up in the air. And then luckily I had my seatbelt on because I was still building up the steering wheel. And then I feel the truck come down. I had gone over a telephone pole.
Wow.
And I just
Couldn't
didn't
see
see it because it was twilight. And that's why they don't let you come back early.
Until the light of
you
day.
got to clear the roadways. You
Right.
know, there's a lot of different things that can cause you some problems.
Yeah.
And that was a good example from Zeta. So
Right.
That's why you don't come back. But it's still, let the levee protect your property and put your body and your kids and your family naturally high ground.
And be safe.
Look,
Yep.
there's no guarantee.
Right. None.
Wind and rain and tornadoes won't get you somewhere else. But storm surge is still the biggest threat to life.
It really
and we were
is.
so lucky nobody died with that wind or
Right.
storm surge.
And we'll talk about the specifics of what we saw and what we experienced as we were presented with that, and we'll do a lot of that when we come back. So they were trying to tell us how bad this was going to be, and like you mentioned, and I want to echo it, we need to listen. We need to get our families to high ground. We need to get our families out of town. If they say to evacuate, we need to do that.
Absolutely. Too many close calls with this
Right.
storm.
Exactly.
I mean, all over South Louisiana.
That's exactly right.
And look, you cannot tell for sure where it's going to hit.
No,
That's why
we
the
never
whole
know
area
that.
has to leave.
That's right.
And sometimes you leave and not too much happens. But
Right.
man, if you don't leave and you get a flood situation, that's something you don't want to go through.
And that's where the loss of life comes in. They tell us that time and time again that flooding is where the greatest loss of life is with these kind of
the
events.
storm surge coming in.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right. And so,
Yeah.
short of a couple of areas that got very little water, we were very, very fortunate. And we're very thankful that the levee districts work so well together to keep us safe.
Absolutely. We tell people, look, and as we tell people, we cannot guarantee that they won't flood. But the one thing we do guarantee is that we're better protected today than yesterday, and we're going to be better protected tomorrow than today.
That's exactly right.
And we're just very fortunate that storm, fortunate in that we were able to keep the water out because
Right.
it was a powerful storm. It was beyond the design of our system.
Yeah. Or
And it
any
just-
system.
well,
No
in-
system
in
can
this
be
area,
prepared for that.
If any system had a chance of surviving the storm in our area, it was ours.
was ours,
Because it's
right.
it's old. It's 20,
Right.
20 years ahead of anybody around us.
Absolutely.
But there's been great strides here in Terrebonne, and we're going to talk a little bit about some big things about to happen here in
Yeah,
Terrebonne.
that's a good thing. All right, let's roll through the slides, Sir Jen, and we'll let Wendell address those.
Yeah, now this image, if you look to the National Hurricane Center, they put out their Hurricane Ida report. This is the last page in a 147-page report.
Okay.
And the dark blue line, the aqua line, that's the actual route that the hurricane hit, right on the parish line, right near Grand Bayou, right between us. And
Yep.
that's actually the critical path for us, because in South Lafourche, we were never in the eye.
That's right.
And we were in the eye wall for a very long,
Long time.
That's where the highest winds are.
and damage in the
And
high.
highest tides. And,
Right.
And again, we had the water to the top of the levee, and again, slight overtopping, but again, we were able to handle it.
Right.
But this image also shows that dotted line.
Right?
And that dotted line is saying, look, they couldn't guarantee that the storm wouldn't have been on that dotted line, just like it could have been more to the west.
Right,
But
closer
what
to
they
Terrebonne.
did is they ran it along the dotted line to see what the differences would be. And what they show a difference is actually that big purple area near our levee system is a reduction of 7 feet of water. That's how much
7
difference
feet.
it makes being
Between that
a little
solid
bit,
line and the dotted line.
It's a counterclockwise rotation.
Right.
So when the solid line, we were in the south wind, bringing water from the Gulf. With the dotted line, we had north
Winds,
winds pushing
moving
the
water
water
out.
or compared to what it was
Was for
before.
That's right. And so Terrebonne had water being pushed out. Lafourche
Right.
had water being pushed in.
Exactly. And now this dotted line also shows, as you get up toward the Mississippi River, they indicate that it would have gone over the West Bank levee protection. That the $14 billion
Right.
flood protection on the east and west bank in New Orleans area. They are saying that this model shows that it would have overtopped that
Wow.
expensive levee system that they had out there.
Had it taken that dotted line.
If it had taken that
Wow.
route, it was again a Category 4 hurricane, again, fifth most intense storm to ever hit the United States. So this was going to cause some problems wherever it went.
Absolutely.
And again, you can't, and that was the one thing, the Hurricane Center. And then if you want to look, Hurricane Ida forum on YouTube, you can see the whole hour and a half presentation by the Hurricane Center on the road. They
about
came
the
down and
storm.
gave that presentation and talked about why this could happen.
Right.
They can't. The average miss at landfall is even 8 to 10 miles,
8 to 10,
and
right.
that can make all the difference in the world. But they have to make predictions, and you got to start moving more than
several
24 hours
early.
ahead.
Right.
The average miss 24 hours ahead is sometimes 20 miles.
Yeah.
So you don't know exactly what the storm's going to do, if you're going to be on the worst part or a little bit better part.
Right.
So that's why you have to evacuate a whole area, but you
Right.
do it. All right.
So let's
next
look at
slide.
these floodgates.
And okay, on this side, this we're looking northwesterly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you look right on the middle of the picture, it shows that sheet pile wall going into the levee.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look real close, you'll see that it was damaged. And
right.
the levee was taken away. Luckily, the sheet pile was there, and it didn't erode around the sheet pile.
Right.
But we're having to take some dirt from the bypass channel. If you look to the right corner, we just excavated that dirt to start the repair on the levee. Okay, next slide.
Go ahead.
And here's where the damage
Wow.
is. Now, we had a lot of dirt. We had concrete matting in
Right.
there. The storm took it out.
Wow. Right.
Okay. Now, we had some other places along there that everything worked out real well. This is the one spot we had a problem.
Right.
And we're in the process of solving it. It's one of the last pieces of damage that we have on the levee. But we're going to do a little bit different design. We're going to slope it a little more.
Right.
We'll make sure the matting is anchored a lot more than it was, and we're hoping not to have that. That was one of the things that came out of Katrina. Mm-hmm. Everywhere you had your sheet pile walls intersecting levees, you had some washouts in those areas. Mm-hmm. So we did spend extra time and attention. It was enough to not let it wash out, but we did have some damage. And we're going to correct that and make it stronger than it was before.
Okay.
All right, next slide. And again, it's just us getting the material out. Next slide. And again, putting it in place right in front of it, and we'll eventually have some segmented concrete matting in there. All right, next slide. Again, that's the slope that we're putting in.
Okay.
All right, next slide.
New evaluated slope.
The debris. We had, I talked to people who had been and worked on debris for Katrina and Rita in some of the worst places. They said they never saw as much debris as they saw on our levee. They estimated 1 million cubic yards of debris.
Wow.
Now that debris went anywhere from marsh to, you see these oil field structures.
Right.
And we had an estimate
Boats.
of it costing, look, that used to be a canal where you see all that going on.
Right.
But that was $25 a cubic yard was the estimate to take that stuff off. And now, so I'm thinking, the storm hit, August 29. Here we are in September, and I got to
8
get that
months
material off and get ready for next season, next hurricane season.
Right.
All right?
Exactly.
And so $25 a cubic yard, $25 million. I don't have that kind of money to build a levee, much less take material off.
Right.
But my field crew got in there, started doing. We had a contractor, we had an engineering firm, we had also working with us, and also FEMA. Mm-hmm. And through the negotiations of moving, a lot of that material was organic.
Right.
So they allowed us to push it off a little bit. They allowed us to burn it. So we were able to reduce the cost to something like $6 million.
Wow.
With FEMA handling most of the cost. So out of our taxpayers' pockets, we've only had to spend $500,000 to move that stuff out. So our people in the field with their equipment doing that with the contractor, with FEMA working with us, well, our engineers working with us. We're still not totally cleared, but we are almost there.
Close.
And once we get that completely cleared, we can finish all the repairs and then try to get the grass to start to grow. You see, here's our contractors. This is our people actually moving the material off of the edge of the levee. Okay, next slide. And that's 5 feet thick of organic material on the levee.
Wow.
Now, just to the right, that's a Borough Canal. That's 14 feet deep, completely filled up with marsh. There was a boat that was stuck in there.
Right.
They tried to dig it out. They couldn't.
They had
to actually drag it on the edge of the levee and then drag it for a mile to get it in some open water. This material, unbelievable stuff. Next slide. And now again, moving it out. Now we have to get this material off because we got to get the grass to regrow.
Right.
Because
to strengthen.
To keep your material of your levee in place, you need to have the grass roots there. And we're throwing seeds like crazy right now where we're clearing this area. Next slide. That's our Borough Canal. That's actually a canal.
Wow.
Near a boat launch, you see that little structure sitting up there.
Wow.
And that Superior Canal, it's just starting to clear. If you look in the distance, it's starting to open up a little bit, but that's completely filled with organic material. This storm was super powerful. Okay, next slide. Now, this is the worst damage we have on the slide. This is the debris. This is one of the places the water got over the system, and that's a whole bunch of material. Next slide. And here's us clearing some of that material. Next slide.
Right.
And this is where we had the most damage on the levee. This is Clovelly Forms. That's dirt got churned up by the water going over the top of the levee.
Okay.
Luckily, the crown held, and we did okay. Next slide. Now that's it. So it's cleared, and we got the levee up to plus 14 feet. It was 13 before. It's real smooth. Next slide. And we're able to plant it, and we've got this ryegrass growing, and so we got it in shape. And most of the levee we've gotten in shape, but we don't have the grass quite in this good a condition, but it's getting there. Next slide. And I wanted to mention this.
Okay.
I've got a house that I've been living in 30 years, no flood claims. Okay, flood insurance is looking about to kill all of us in South Louisiana.
That's right.
Great increases. Scalise, Representative Scalise, the last time they tried to raise it, he used that, and that showed the road inside the levee system completely dry, the road outside on tropical storms goes under, and saying that we should get credit where we have protected ourselves. But we're afraid this risk rating 2.0 is going to hurt everybody in South Louisiana, and we need to fight and say, look, where we've kept the water out, we need to get the help. And I wanted to say one thing in Morganza, the last segment between the Lafourche Ridge and the Terrebonne Ridge, we're going to get closed, and that's a big step forward.
Huge. And y'all working together has been always wonderful, and we appreciate that. Wendell, thank you for the pictures and the stories and letting us know what it was really like. We appreciate your time today. All right, and that will do it for Going Public today. Thank you very much for joining us. There's a whole lot more on HTV as we continue.